that you will be, I'm going to assume, the liberal destroyer, you will be behaving in good faith here, right?
Yeah,
You're going to
then the
be a
name's
nice
mostly a
guy,
joke.
and you're not going to talk over the whole time. But let's hear out your position. Have you had a chance to look at my hot takes list?
No, yeah, I was just listening to your talk with Dave, and I was wondering where you got your axioms from, because you said you can like scrutinize other moral systems, and then you referenced that you had some axioms of which you do this. So I was wondering where those axioms actually came from.
Yes. So my axioms, they come from me, but it comes from a steady studying the world that we find ourselves in, and observing less human suffering, and people being able to live their lives as they see fit, and more people being able to fulfill what I call their own level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
So when you look at the world and you say, okay, suffering is bad, so I should build a system of morality based on that, you're assuming that suffering is bad, which I find it if you're arguing purely from a
Mm.
rational standpoint, how can you assume such a thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's because the concept of a desire of survival, it is not that it is good or bad. It's actually it's entropic. It must happen.
So if it's not good or bad, then what makes your moral system correct?
Mhm. It's entropic. It's not that it's correct. It's that it must go in that direction. It is
So
inevitable.
you're saying you have no other direction but to form a moral system based on how you observe the world?
Mhm.
So then what would be invalid about, say, a terrorist in the Middle East who says, I want to torture a bunch of babies?
Mhm.
Like he can form a
Yeah, I
moral
mean, it just
system
seems
that
like
way, right?
needless suffering.
I mean, it seems like needless suffering, but once again, kind of assuming suffering is bad. He can come to the
No, again,
conclusion suffering is
I'm
very
saying that
good.
it's based off of it is based off of survival.
Yeah, but that's assuming survival is a good thing, right? But not everybody has to necessarily value survival.
Again, it's not that you're desiring versus not desiring. It is that it is entropic. It is inevitable. It must go in that direction. You don't get a choice in this matter.
So then
It's
when
like
somebody
asking for the
says, I
gravity
want
to not be there. It must be there.
so when but that's not necessarily the case. We see many
It is the case.
civilizations or groups of people who will go against the idea that survival is good and they'll say, okay, well, we could just torture a bunch of people because you know what, that's just a good thing to do right now.
Okay. Maybe if I read to you where I get my morality from, it might help. So
Sure.
just give me 1 second while I pull up the musing.
Yeah.
Hey, atheist, where do you get your morality from? Morality comes from a long evolutionary pathway of survival. The desire of survival is entropic. But what could these words possibly mean? These words are not random. Entropy is strictly a mechanistic function of the universe. All matter results in one form of entropy or another, which is including all living organisms. Entropy, to place it in an understandable term, is where things go from a finite higher energy state into a lower energy state of less interaction into chaos. Think about a hot cup of coffee. Should the hot cup of coffee be in the middle of the room, eventually the cup of coffee will exude its energy out from the coffee and out into the room. The result is the coffee now matches the temperature of the room, and the room becomes slightly hotter. The energy is now spread out and can no longer interact. All organisms operate with this universal principle. Think if I took a single-celled eukaryote, as in possessing a cell wall, a nucleus, mitochondria, a cilia, little hairs that provide locomotion, and put a hot poker beside it. The hot poker exudes out energy from the hot poker through entropy. The energy touches the cell wall of the eukaryote and then mechanistically begins binding to the chemicals of the cell walls, cascading into a series of proteins that excites the motors of the cilia, causing the eukaryote to swim away. The eukaryote, as a result, never thought about survival. It has no brain to perceive or desire survival. It never felt that it would die and that it should run away. It simply runs entirely out of mechanistic notions. I do not believe humans are much different, though. Our form of survival, however, is more complex due to the fact that we are a social species. This would be just thinking of us like the eukaryote, but with extra steps. We propagate survival by being a social species. This means we mechanistically attempt to work together, and we mechanistically desire survival. Indeed, even the suicidal person flinches when you swing your fist at them. Survival is entropic. It must happen independent of our desire for it to happen. Our understanding of morality, while subjective, is predicated on a desire of survival, which is chemically determined. Therefore, we create moral understanding off of survival, and that which does not propagate the survival or serves to destroy it is quote-unquote wrong, entirely off of mechanistic means. There you go.
So the point here is that I agree that it's a natural order for organisms to, I don't know, accept these kind of things, or it's entropic for, I don't know, death of a species to be bad. But once again, that's not to say that the death of a species is good or bad. So you can say, okay, terrorism defies our entropic, whatever, necessity, but that's not to say it's actually good or bad, just that it goes against this core principle of evolution.
It's a core principle of evolution. It's that there's a level of entropy that is happening when it comes to survival. In fact, it's quite often that you'll have a tribalistic notion, like what you're talking about with, like, you know, the extremist who is holding hostage a series of people. This is likely people who are outside of their tribe, and so they are desiring to survive. So while they come up with a completely different notion of what they would consider to be surviving, it still is effectively, you know, stemmed off of a concept of survival.
But I still don't understand how that shows that survival is good. Like, it shows humans must survive, or that it's human nature to want to survive. But what about that shows that it's truly good to survive?
Honestly, well, again, that's why I don't say that the concept of survival is good or bad. I'm saying it is inevitable. But with that being said, if you wanted that, it makes my brain chemicals excited. There you go. That's why.
Okay, so it's
also yours too.
So to some extent, it's how you feel, is what you're saying. I feel this way, so that's what I base my morals off of.
Yep.
Okay, so then is there anything wrong with terrorism other than how you feel?
No, of course, there's lots of things wrong with terrorism. You're making life worse. You're causing people to die for no reason, that's off of the basis of atavisms that don't actually have any empirical reality behind them.
Right, but you're assuming once again that survival is, or suffering is bad, right? And I admit that, sure, it goes against whatever entropic nature, but that once again doesn't say anything to the credence of whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've already brought it out plain and center. It is entropic. It must happen. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad.
So then
it's going to happen entirely out of mechanistic notions. No, it is bad.
So it's not good or bad.
It is bad in our
defies
subjective
entropic
interpretation.
Nature.
It is bad.
Okay, but that once again, then that's just the way you feel your feelings.
Yeah, you're the same way. That's not any different for me. That's not different for anybody. Any moral system, it's the same concept.
Right. So then I'm saying that if we just purely base our morals on how we feel, how can that be rational in any sense?
What do you base your
morals
on?
Say, what?
What do you base your morals on?
Oh, I think that's kind of irrelevant, but I think there's certain things humans. Okay, so then I'll go into that. I think that there's some things humans kind of have to accept. So, for example, we can't necessarily prove, or I can't prove that you exist. I just accept that you exist. So I think morals are more or less the same way. We accept something and we act. I think they can come from many places. I think people can make up their own morals, which is what we call subjective morality.
Where do your morals come from? Not what other people. I'm asking you.
I don't know where my morals come from. I have absolutely no idea, but I'm not going to make the claim that morals are subjective, because I find no other choice than to subscribe to objective morality and say hardline terrorism is wrong.
So then if morals are objective, can you give me an example of an objective morality?
Sure. I believe in the objective morality that killing innocent people is bad. It's a no-no.
Killing innocent people is bad. I mean, in terms of survival, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't believe that's objective.
My point is that, no. Well, I can't do anything to prove that.
For example, they could have actually have done nothing, but that there's like this interpretation that they could do something wrong. So you're like preemptively attacking innocent people.
I'm just giving the example of something that I find to be wrong, and I'm saying I can't prove to you that there's like a God ordained like
I mean, I'm just
law to the
saying the
universe,
fact that there
but
can even be an interpretation is telling me that it's subjective, not objective. Do you have another example?
well, no, I'm saying you can sure anybody can say something subjective, but my point is that something like that would be irrational. So then
No, it's not
I don't know
irrational.
how
I'm saying
people.
that that could arrive entirely out of rational means, but to you and your subjective interpretation, it is irrational. But the point is that it is up for interpretation, which means that that would be subjective. Do you have another example?
How it's subject. Well, my point is that once again, everything that you can say something is bad, and I agree that's subjective. But when we talk about objective moralities, I'm giving an example of something that is truly objective. So you can say, well, that's just what you think.
Well, you gave an
But I'm saying
example
for
of
the
something that is up for interpretation, and given the fact that it's up for interpretation, that would mean it's subjective. By its
well, I'm
very
saying
nature, it's
the
subjective.
premise of the objective moral I'm giving is that it's truly not up for interpretation. That it's a
I
God
just gave you an
ordained law of the
example of how
universe.
it's. Are you saying that your predication is off of God?
Well, I'm not saying I necessarily believe that, but I'm saying from the perspective of somebody who does believe in objective morality, that's an example they would give. And I'm
I'm
not saying you
asking
can
you,
prove that.
not someone else. I'm asking you.
For the purpose of this example, sure.
Okay, so if your morals are predicated off of a God, do you think that you would likely believe in a different God if you were born in a different time and place?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay, so it's not objective.
Well, that doesn't mean it's necessarily true or not. I can be born in one place and believe in a false God, and born in another place and believe in a true
If
God.
you were born in 600 BC, would you believe in Zeus? If you were born in Greece,
Sure, but that
do you think that
doesn't
you would
say that
believe in
it's
Jesus
true or
Christ?
false. No,
You would not believe in Jesus Christ. Why not?
but that says nothing to whether Jesus Christ or some other God is truly the God. That's just what I
Okay.
would
Well, did you
believe.
know that people killed one another for not believing in Zeus? So you're going to believe in
Yeah.
Zeus?
No,
Probably,
I'm
right?
not saying I
You're going to die
necessarily
if you
believe in
don't.
any God, but I'm saying that it's just as rational to base your morality off of like a God ordained thing than it is to say, okay,
Not at all.
terrorism's bad because I feel like it.
Not at all. God shows zero impact in the universe. None. It does not interact with a single physical object in the universe.
I mean,
We
can you
show
prove
no
that?
indication of that. Yeah. So because you think that I would imagine you probably would think that the law of conservation of matter and energy is true, right?
Sure.
Okay. So the energy and matter is coming from somewhere. So that would mean that the energy and matter is all explained. And we have no
What do you mean
indication of
explain?
something from an outside ether out into material existence.
Well, I would argue that in order for that matter to come or to exist, it has to come from somewhere,
Does God
correct?
interact with matter?
I mean, he certainly could.
Does God interact with matter? I'm not
I
asking
don't
if he
know.
could. I'm saying, does
It's a
he
skeptic.
interact with
I'm
matter?
arguing a skeptical position,
I
not
understand
claiming
that.
that
Yeah,
God
it's a really
exists.
easy way to weasel out without having to establish a single value statement. So, do you think that God? Can interact with matter?
If he's all powerful, then yes, he can interact with matter.
Okay. Does God interact with matter?
I don't know.
Does it God interact? You have no idea. There's no way to determine. You were just saying so candidly that God can interact with matter, and He is all powerful. So wouldn't it
Well, I have no
logically
proof
infer
of
that
that
they
he
could
does or that he
interact with matter?
doesn't. So I
Well, no,
say
no.
I don't
Actually,
know.
you do have proof. You do have proof. You have proof.
Okay.
You yourself have already said that the conservation of matter and energy makes sense, right? That means
Okay.
that the energy and matter has to come from somewhere, okay?
Correct.
And considering that it is not coming from an ethereal source, but coming from something entirely by naturalistic causes, and we have zero indication of such a case, that would be effectively a defeater.
Okay. So God doesn't interact with our three-dimensional matter.
He
Okay.
does
I
not.
can
He
agree
does
with
not
that point.
interact
Sure.
with the universe. That is correct. God does not
With our
interact with
three with
any of
our
that.
three-dimensional understanding of the
Therefore,
universe.
and there, no, it's not. No, first of all, we can have a four-dimensional understanding of the universe. We can understand time and how it works. So, like,
Time isn't a spatial dimension.
yes, it is. Space-time is the fourth dimension.
That's a different. People say the fourth dimension is time, but that's not necessarily to say it's a fourth dimension. A fourth dimension would
Let me look it
be
up.
if you have a three-dimensional graph, it would be an axis that is perpendicular to one of those axes. But this is all besides the point, right? My point is
No, no.
that even
In the context of physics, and particularly in the theory of relativity, time is referred to as the fourth dimension. It is the fourth dimension. All right,
not but not
moving
a
on.
spatial dimension.
It doesn't matter. The point is that
It doesn't matter.
the
Sure.
point. The point is that God doesn't interact with any of this, right? So,
Okay, it doesn't
let me
interact with
ask
the
you this.
three-dimensional
Let me
world.
ask
Sure.
you this. There's a leprechaun behind you, okay? But
Okay.
when you turn around, it's gone. And when you look in a mirror, it disappears. And if you use a camera
Okay.
to try to look behind you, it also disappears. And if there's another person in the room, it also disappears. Do you think that there's a leprechaun behind you?
If he's in the mirror and I see him,
No, no, no.
then I'd assume so. Yeah.
That isn't what I asked.
Sorry. What did you ask then?
I said you look in the mirror, it disappears. You pull out your
Okay.
camera, it disappears.
No,
There's
absolutely
another
not.
person in the room, it disappears. However, there is a leprechaun behind you.
Okay.
Do you believe that?
No, I
Okay.
have no evidence to believe it.
Interesting. Interesting. So you would say that you would not believe in something on the basis that it doesn't have any evidence for it.
Well, I don't have any evidence that you exist, but I still believe you exist, right?
No, no, you do. I'm right here. I'm talking to you.
Well,
I'm
have
able
you ever
to
heard of
vibrate.
solipsism?
I'm able to vibrate air molecules in the air that allows you to like then hear the vibratory sounds in your ear. You could see that I am live streaming. You can see I'm waving to you, right? I'm
Have you heard
here.
of
I am
solipsism? That was my
interacting
question.
with the physical universe as you see it. So,
I agree, but
but you reject the concept of this leprechaun under basis that there's no indication that it's there, right? It doesn't interact with the universe in any way.
I mean, I have no proof. You're nothing more than something I'm dreaming while my real brain is floating in a void, right? Like I have nothing to prove
You're
that is
missing
my
my
point.
point. You've already
So
said that you
what's your
don't
point?
believe in the leprechaun.
Sure.
Okay. How is God
Yeah.
any different?
Well, one example, I can explain the creation of the universe from an atheist or from a deist perspective. If I was a deist, I could say, okay, God created our universe and then he fucked off. Or from an atheist perspective, I could say our universe came from a previous universe, hence we started with matter. That previous universe didn't necessarily follow our laws of physics.
Well, to be fair, right? Our universe right now isn't exactly super friendly to life. Everywhere we look, it's entirely hostile. It's only on this particular planet that we seem to observe life, but everywhere else is just like a dead void. It's either too hot, too cold, too much gravity. It's just entirely hostile to life. In fact, most of Earth is entirely hostile to humans. There's a lot of parts of Earth
So
that are totally hostile to lots of different types of animals, including us. If I teleported you to a random spot on Earth, the probability that you would die within a few days is a lot higher than not.
sure, but what does this have to do with God creating the universe or it being created from a previous
Well, it
universe or
kind of is
anything
an
like that?
indication that it's not really designed by anything. This anthropomorphic entity that you call God. The
Does
other
it have
problem,
to sustain
the other
humanity to
problem
be
is
designed by
is
somebody?
that you've already understood that the law of conservation and matter hold true, and you also say
Sure.
that the leprechaun doesn't make any sense under basis that there is no evidence for it, and so therefore under by accepting those premises, you would basically, in order to remain logically consistent, you would have to say God also doesn't exist because it doesn't interact with anything in the universe.
Um, I mean, suppose the opposite. Suppose we did have proof of God,
Uh-huh.
right? And this is going to sound awfully convenient, and this is something that like it's just to show that it could go either way. But if we did have proof of God, then there would be no point in having faith, and God doesn't have a reason to show himself to us. So I'm just saying you don't have to like
Why not?
why not what?
We're fighting all the time. There's one group of people over there that believe in like Vishnu, and like they have like this whole karma system. It's really fucking weird. There's like another group of people over there on that island over there where they believe in like lots of little spirits that like hold into rocks and stuff, and like other inanimate objects. There's another one over here where they believe that they'll get like 72 virgins if they just follow that way, and then they can just kill people and have sex with minors. There's a group of people that want to kill that group of people that I was just talking about under the basis of the same exact God, but in a different interpretation of that God. And then there's a group of people that, do you see the problem? Wouldn't it be amazing if God did like show that he's there?
You want me to give like a fine-tuning argument? I can give a fine-tuning argument if you want.
There is, by the way, no indication that the universe is fine-tuned, and there's also no indication that it could potentially be fine-tuned.
Well, I'm saying it's not necessarily either way. The original point of my argument was that maybe maybe we don't have evidence of a God, but there's other things we don't have evidence of, but we still choose to have faith in them. So, for example, if we choose not to believe in a God and we choose not to subscribe to any objective morals, then I find that like a really freaking sad way to live. Like if you can't show that anything's
not
true.
Not at all. I mean,
I as a human being can't accept that.
I think that the system that I uphold leads to better outcomes than if you just assume that there's like this God.
Oh, I absolutely agree. That's why I would first and foremost promote free thinking. I don't like taking away rights from
women. I don't think that spanking your child is a good idea. I don't think
I agree that's much more likely than. No, yeah, I agree that's much more likely than somebody saying, okay, let me just generate a moral.
Whatever sexual proclivity you want, as long as you're not hurting other people, go for it, fam. I don't give a shit.
I'm saying that you can make up whatever moral values you want, and I'm saying that's not.
I'm saying that leads to better outcomes than the other outcome of following God. So this objective moral framework seems to lead to worse off outcomes than like the horrible, degenerate nightmare utopia that is liberalism.
Well, I'm once again, we go back to the point where it seems like you're just like assuming certain things to be good, like survival to be good. When if you follow, like, for example, the Christian standpoint,
I said it's
and
you
abide by Christian morals,
then
heaven is. But once again, that says nothing to whether it's good or bad.
That's fine.
Just that
I
it
understand
must
the is-ought problem. The point is that it's entropic. It must happen.
So then once again we go back. There's nothing actually wrong with terrorism except that entropically it's not.
And also you're the same way. You are the same way.
What do you mean I'm the same way?
You are the same exact way. You have to operate under the same rules whether you like it or not. Because ultimately, your God is dependent on the time and place that you were born in. And by the way, you could totally choose to start believing in Vishnu right now.
So then if everybody must act in an entropic way,
why have you not read the Bhagavad Gita? I read the Bhagavad Gita. Why didn't you?
I don't know. I just don't really care about Hinduism.
You don't like Hare Krishna? Why do you not like Hare Krishna? Is it because
that's a different thing,
your parents aren't that? And the people around you aren't that? And there's no temples nearby that allow you to go there and experience that?
I have a lot of Hindu friends actually, but this is all besides the point. My point is that, okay, so you live by this entropic nature. So would you not say that's akin to like you act every day in your life as if you believe in those objective morals? You can say, okay, I don't believe in this objective morals, but when it comes to acting every day, it seems like you act as if you believe things that are hold entropically are objectively true. No?
Sure. Like the act of entropy is objective. Sure.
No, but I'm saying you act as if you say, okay, entropy gives an example for why humans must act away.
Well,
and then you objectively act as if something is true.
What I've given was like the predication or the start of morality, and then we can build off of this desire of survival. And so like one thing that I look at is I think that every individual possesses their own, what I call what is called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where at the root level, in order to like, in order to live out the life that you see fit, you kind of have to have the lowest levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs met. And this is because that you're effectively a furnace that needs to like constantly consume things in order to like survive and live out the things that you find valuable. And so like what I want to do is live in a society that facilitates that as much as possible.
I mean, I'm once again, I refer back to the point where entropic like necessity isn't something that shows good or bad, but we as humans take that to mean something is good or bad. So
Yep.
in that way, we're acting as if something's objectively true.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you agree, you act as if something's objectively true.
I think that the state of entropy is objectively true. But I think that we arrive to subjective interpretation as to whether or not something is right or wrong under basis. Like for me, I use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but yes, it is entirely subjective, but that doesn't matter. That's every single moral system. What I then want to look at is outcomes. Are people happier? Are people more satisfied? Do people get to live out their life as they see fit to the greatest degree?
Right, so you agree that it's subjective, but you act as if it's objective. So I see like a contradiction there between
Nope.
what you're saying and what your actions
But
are.
you do have a contradiction.
What's my contradiction?
I've already pointed it out to you earlier.
I do not recall that, but
Yeah. So it's the part where I asked you that the law of conservation of matter is true, yet God
okay.
doesn't influence in the universe whatsoever, and you don't accept the concept of this leprechaun existing under the basis that it doesn't actually interact with the universe in any way, and so
Right.
therefore there would be no God. But you don't accept that. In order
No,
to remain
because I'm saying
logically
God doesn't
consistent.
have to God doesn't have to interact with our three-dimensional
Gotcha.
world to exist.
So would you
is
say
my
that
point.
God exists beyond space-time?
If he's infinitely powerful, he's not bounded by any spatial or time dimension.
Okay, so since he is not interacting with the universe, he's not in the universe, right?
Not necessarily. Something can be in a like a physical system without interacting with that system.
Okay, so are there photons traveling in the universe?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, yeah,
Are there space-time waves? Are there waves of space-time being warped by gravity?
sure.
Okay. So if God appeared in the universe, wouldn't he influence these things?
We were thinking three-dimensionally. If he was
Nope,
three-dimensionally
this
in
is
like
this is
our
entire
black floating
nope.
void,
Applying
then
space-time is
that would be
four-dimensionally.
a
But
cause
go
and
ahead.
effect thing. But he doesn't have to be in any spatial dimension, right? He's beyond all of that. He doesn't
Okay.
have to be affected by
So are you
anything.
saying God could be literally the universe?
I mean, that's not what I was thinking, but I don't know whether that's true or not. I'd have to think more about that. But
So do you think God exists beyond space-time?
do I think God exists beyond space-time? Sure.
Okay. Can I ask you this? Why are you anthropomorphizing that which exists beyond space-time?
What do you mean anthropomorphizing or whatever?
You are applying human characteristics to something that is wholly alien to us.
What human characteristics am I applying to it?
You are calling it God and that it made us.
Oh, yeah, because I understand that that's
Does
not
it care about
necessarily an
us?
accurate representation. I would think that it whether it does or it doesn't, I'm not really
I'm
sure.
asking you, do
I
you
think
think?
both are very plausible outcomes.
I'm saying, do you think?
That's not something I've thought about, but uh,
So
if
let me
I,
just
for
be
the
clear.
purpose of this
God makes the
conversation, let me say no,
universe and is just like, fuck humans.
or
I
just
don't give a
fucks
shit
off,
about that.
basically. Yeah,
And then the
sure.
second thing is do you even think it has a mind? Did it design you think it designed the universe, right?
I mean, yeah,
Right?
sure.
It fine-tuned it. Okay, that's
Sure.
a wholly human interpretation, an
Right, because we have no
anthropomorphization
other
of that
option
which is
but
beyond
to
space-time. Let me ask you this. Let's say if I held up a rock,
we
right? I held up a rock.
we have no option
Hold
but
on,
to apply
hold on,
those terms
hold
to
on,
him.
hold on.
You're like bulleting points now. We're like going past things.
No. I'm gonna drive it back home.
All right.
I have a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that is that a face to you?
No, it's a rock.
Okay. Let's say, for example, that I put two googly eyes on it and then I put a smiley face with a permanent marker. Is it a face?
Closer,
Is it a
closer,
face?
but no, no.
Okay. But you said closer. Why is it closer?
Because it has it's like Plato's forms. We have like an ideal version of a form somewhere, or some
Yeah.
concept of that, or believe in some concept of that,
Humans
which has certain
are
like
very,
certain like essence. But when something has more and more of those like parts, then we say, okay, it's closer.
yeah. So humans are very, very good at anthropomorphizing things. We attribute human characteristics to things that are entirely not human, right?
Right.
The what you're looking at didn't get any closer to a face in reality, because when you think about what a googly eye is, a googly eye is just going to be, some plastic, right? That's formed in a specific way to make it look like an eye. And the permanent marker is not a mouth. It's just some ink that's been put on rock, right? It's not a face. But
So if
we
you look at a
at things
painting
and
and
we
there's
look
a
at
picture of a
patterns.
face, you say no,
I
it's not a
understand.
face.
I'm saying it literally is not a face. That's correct. It's not a face.
Okay,
It
sure.
is an
Literally not a face,
interpretation
yeah.
of a face. The point is that humans are very good at anthropomorphizing things that are not human or don't establish human characteristics. So,
Right.
let me ask you this, right? Let's change it up. Let's make it bigger.
Yeah.
Let's say that there was a mountain, right? It's no longer a rock,
Okay.
it's a mountain. And I said, the mountain told me to come say hi to you. It's bullshit, right? Is that bullshit?
Sure.
Why is
Yeah.
it bullshit?
Because we've never observed a mountain to do something like that, and we have no reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah, mountains can't talk. Mountains don't have they don't have the anthropomorphism that I'm placing on it that it could talk to me. It doesn't have that.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So mountains that's out of the question, right?
Yeah.
Let's make it bigger. The earth, the entirety of earth. Earth spoke to me
Uh-huh.
and it wanted me to say hi to you. Is that bullshit?
Sure. Yes.
Why is it bullshit?
Because we've never observed the Earth to talk, or have no reason to believe that in any capacity.
Correct. Okay. Let's make it even bigger. The universe told me to say hi to you. Is that bullshit?
Sure.
Why is it bullshit?
The universe can't talk.
Okay. That which is beyond space-time, God told me to say hi to you.
I mean, it's possible.
Is that bullshit?
I think it's possible
Why is that possible?
because he's not bound by any restrictions,
But you're
and we
talking
know
about
nothing of.
something beyond space-time. It would possess
Sure.
no
Yeah.
it is entirely possible it possesses no anthropomorphic qualities whatsoever. It may
Right. So
possess
if
no more consciousness than the rock, than the mountain, than the earth, than the universe.
humans are
Why would
purely
you
a
attribute
physical
human
body, then that's not.
characteristics to some, like, by the way, I've given you all things that exist within space-time, right? So you can at least attribute the
Sure.
fact that you're a carbon-based, right? Which is, I mean, that's already very much more human than anything that would be outside space-time.
I agree.
So why would you attribute human characteristics to something that exists beyond space-time? You didn't do it for the universe, the rock, the mountain, any of these things. But as soon as I get it, make it bigger, all of a sudden you can't accept that.
Well, it's not necessarily like he's talking to you. It would more be like he can't, or he like touches your soul, or so, like something to that description. Or if humans are purely, if they're beyond like a physical body,
So I'm
or they
asking you
have
the
a soul,
question.
then it
God told me
transcends
to say
that.
hi to you. Is that bullshit?
Like you've talked with the mouth, yes.
No, I'm saying he told me to say hi to you.
Well, what do you mean by told? You can tell
They
something
talked to
someone
me.
or
They
tell
told me
something to
to say
anyone.
hi to you. Is that
Like a
bullshit?
person who comes up to you
They
in the
came
morning
up.
and says good
I
morning.
just came up to you this morning, and I told you, God told me to say hi to you.
Yes, then that would be bullshit. Yeah.
Why is it bullshit?
Because God doesn't necessarily have a physical body. That's not to say he couldn't come into a physical body.
Does God care about humans?
I have no reason to believe that he does or doesn't.
Did he fine tune the universe? Did he
I think
design?
it's a
Sorry,
possibility,
design the
but once
universe.
again, I don't have evidence of something like that.
Okay.
I think the universe, there's some extremely cool things that happen in our universe, but I don't know the probabilities of any one thing truly happening. It would be irrational for me to say, yes, he did or no, he didn't.
Yeah. Do you have anything else for me? I have a. This was an interesting conversation.
No, I just think that when it comes to rationality, believing in something like God isn't necessarily less rational than believing in, for example, your morals or your
It's
axioms.
only about as rational as that leprechaun I talked to you about.
What's his rational? Sorry, I think maybe my headphones cut out, but
It's only about as rational as that leprechaun I talked to you about.
um, I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean, we don't really have rationality can't prove too many things, so.
Good talk, man.
All right, yeah, see ya.
All right. Let me just finish up